Okay. Who's ready to beat this boss? You know, so when I was younger, I used to play with the sword out like that. Never quite processed that you got a slight magic boost from leaving the claw out like that. Also, this is by far one of the best battle themes in all of video game music history. That's what I have to say about that. Okay, see now, that's when you would start using refreshers. That spark brings your magic level down. Is it really worth wasting a turn to fix, though? 1916. Nope. But yeah, I used to turn on my Super Nintendo and go to a save right at the boss, and then just listen to this music. Okay, that's not nice. I think the one thing she doesn't have protection from. He's just beating up on her. One does 100 more damage. It's not a huge lot to have him heal. It's a spider. She's gonna need a seat, and she's dead. Okay, I mean that does kind of work. Not exit, that's fine. I've never tried to use exit as an instant death attack. Oh. He is really targeting her. I don't know why he's picking on her like that. Again, exit needs to be far, far away from the beginning. I want to say this is its last form, so we're almost there. Also, I was recently sharing this soundtrack with someone, and the connection between this music and like what we'll call real rock music makes some sense to me now. You couldn't have told me that earlier, but when I go back and I listen to even some of the newer metal music that comes out now, I recognize that like music like this, you call my gateway drug into some of that other music, because this is clearly like derived from that sense of rock. I'm just rolling the dice here. Maybe I'll beat him before. There we go. Didn't need to heal. But yeah. That maybe if I hadn't have played this game or some other JRPGs that showed me a side of rock or metal that I really wasn't otherwise acquainted with, it would probably seem so foreign to me that I wouldn't want to listen to it. It's just so, I guess it's weird to think about, like if I'm showing someone some harder metal stuff that I might listen to today, and they're not getting it, they're not grasping what they're hearing. They may want to like it, but it's just not syncing with them. It would never occur to me to tell them to play Final Fantasy Mystic Quest. Oh yeah, okay, yeah, I see where this is going now. Thank you for introducing me to this game. But yeah, I did manage to beat it in 10 hours. I don't know why exactly it would have taken me 12 to 14 when I was younger. It's possible that I didn't use the rewind button. Obviously, I was playing on a console, so some of my mistakes I had to eat. Facts, real facts. But I do think, like I said earlier, I would turn the game on and listen to certain tracks over and over again, or I would set it as background music while I did, like made lunch, Whereas now I'll sever the game. Right, the stream is over. I'll go do something else and I'll come back. Right. Also, this is why I say it should be fun and interesting to make a sequel to this game, because your main character, his name's supposed to be Benjamin, I believe. I named him Bart just because the weird parallels between this game and Final Fantasy V. But he goes off on an adventure. Look at that. Nice looking graphics. Seagull moving in slow motion. I like how the location queue came up deck. Like we didn't know where we were. So Tristam is going to go with me. He's going to be my buddy, my traveling companion. and then they just go sailing off into the. It's not even the sunset really. The bright white skies. This completely unknown world. So the possibilities would be almost endless when it came to a quote-unquote sequel to this game, as long as there were some mechanics that were similar and you kind of expanded on this. You could do a lot with that. Also, I was explaining to this friend of mine that Ryuji Sasai was actually, and probably still is, a professional bass player. So some of these tracks like this, you can hear a clear, I don't want to say virtuosic, but it's a very comfortable sense of bass movement. Which is not to say you could hear a song like this and go, oh, I bet you that person plays bass. But if I told you that person played bass, you'd be like, oh, okay, yeah, that makes more sense now. But yeah, I don't know. I just been thinking about that the past couple days, listening to some other metal music and other rock music. That part of the reason that okay, yeah, Kawakami. That's the other one. Ryuji Sasai. I don't know what the Y stands for anymore, but Kawakami is the last name. So some of the more chill, some of the more jazzy tracks, like the Wintry Cave and the town theme. Um, those were written by him. Whereas Ryuji Sasai had more domain over the dungeon themes and the battle themes. And it worked out well, I think, for this game. I think it was a nice balance there. I would think at this stage the end part would have come up by now, but you know, it's not it's not easy to perfectly time these things. I'm wondering if right in front of the boat those are supposed to be dolphins or something. You see those little blue bits? Just kind of moving to the right. I want to know who got a tropical bright green feather. Where'd you find that? I'm afraid that if I don't end my portion of the dialogue, I'm going to be fighting with these seagulls for like the rest. Hold on. Let me pause this. There we go. All right, now you can still see it, but you won't hear the seagulls. We're not going to be fighting over each other. Right? If you wanted to do something, you know, cool and creative, you could take the easiest, role-playing game that seems to be made ever. There are some difficult points. Obviously, you saw me die a few times, right? So I don't think it's fair to say this is the easiest ever. I just think that they did make some of the mechanics as simple as possible. And sometimes oversimplifying things makes things more complicated. It's a life lesson to be found in this game. Like to the point where you have your magic where there's four white magic, four black magic, four wizard magic, but it's not really clear what the distinctions are and what's weak to what. And I had to do some research myself on the magic power of each thing. So Phoebe had thunder as a wizard type option, but there are so few enemies that we would have benefited from getting a critical hit on, or we would call that a weak hit um, on with a thunder spell that we couldn't do more damage with a white spell anyway, which is also a wizard spell. The only difference with that is that you can target thunder on one enemy, and white you have to target on all. But you could really take the mechanics of that and say, all right, well, maybe we're not going to use the magic system as it was, but maybe we'll use something that is maybe equally as simple, but maybe more intuitive. and have a conversation with other developers, and other content creators about making an RPG that's that simple. So much so that you wouldn't even know unless somebody said it. Hey, what this reminds me of Final Fantasy Mystic Quest. I mean, kind of, but not really. You know, it's got that simple RPG feel, but it's not. It's obviously got different mechanics to it. I think that would be cool. I say that because I started playing this game 20 years ago, and it has a place in my heart that I'm sure is only shared by like three other people on planet Earth. So, as always, I appreciate you watching, especially as I go through some of these older games that mean something to me or meant something to me when I was younger. Maybe mean less now, maybe mean more now in certain ways. Um, but if you've never played them before, if you've never seen them played before, don't understand sort of the mechanics of them, that sort of thing. Um, I hope I expose something good about them, but I don't know. I was going to say something a little more deeply psychological than that. I don't suppose it's worth not saying. If if by watching my process or listening to my process as I'm going through these games and trying to figure out what's still good about it and what's efficient and what's not, in my brain, I'm still kind of reprocessing those memories. I'm reprocessing this game. I'm understanding it differently than I did before. Um, and being able to do that with an experience that I had 20 years ago is useful to me, not just because it's recreational and entertaining, but because it's also beneficial from a psychological perspective. It helps me reorient myself. If I tell myself this is what my priorities are in this game, and it turns out my priorities were sideways. I managed to beat the game in 10 hours when I used to beat it in 14, 12 to 14. Like, what was my deal? What was I doing? Was I actually reading the dialogue boxes? I'm sure probably y'all would have liked it if I had slowed down and let you read the dialogue boxes. But you can see you probably didn't miss much, right? There were a couple of times where I missed my cues and I didn't know where I was supposed to go because I didn't read that quickly. And the game did not repeat some of the things that I needed to know to get where I needed to get to. Like the clues were not big enough for me. Um, but like I said, there are deeper psychological applications for that. In real life, we skim through most of what we see, most of what we hear. We don't remember it. Um, but we have to be able to pinpoint somewhere in the world things that are important enough um, to focus on and a priority enough to process and reprocess if need be, so that we're learning and remembering what we need to learn and remember from things. Um, And so, even though this is supposed to be one of the easiest role-playing games ever made, it still excuse me, I'm losing my voice. It still has it still has a profound effect on me from that processing and reprocessing perspective. Um, to the point where I see something like that tacky green um, quill, right? I don't. I'm trying to remember in the game if there were birds with green feathers. I'm sure they existed, like one of the Sparna type characters. Um, it would be interesting if that somehow, like if you had a sequel, that this would show up, that this green feather would show up as some part of the plot. Um, so instead of the end, it's part of the new beginning, that sort of thing. Um, and being able to put your finger on it, right? It almost becomes like an icon, regardless of you know how old this game is or how old you were when you first played it or watched somebody else play it, right? The next time you see a green feather, you're like, really? Why would he? why, why would Aaron put something like that in my brain? So now I can't see a green feather and not think of that stupid video game. Um, the be able to, the ability to make and break those kinds of connections is important. And so, on one hand, yeah, Final Fantasy Mystic Quest is pretty simple. Uh, what took me 10 hours, I think I could probably do in 8. I could probably skip a few things and make my way through it a lot faster than I did. Um, but to be as simple as it is, it's not fair to discount it altogether as some kind of effective work of art, at least from my perspective, from my life. It had a profound effect on me musically, some of my musical interests, not just as a young teenager, but now as an adult, right? It helped frame that for better or for worse. Like I said, someone could call it a gateway drug. Listening to this type of music and then listening to actual like real metal or real rock. Um, but anyway, um, that's all I have to say about that for now. As far as what I'm gonna do next, I suppose I should try the Nuzlocke idea and see how far that goes. I don't like losing, but unlike Final Fantasy Mystic Quest, it seemed to be so easy that you can't possibly lose. I think switching gears into doing a Nuzlocke could be a fun-ish and entertaining exercise in learning to let go of things, learning to disconnect from things, um, being okay with losing. But I think that's what I'm going to do next. As always, if you made it this far, I do appreciate you. I really do. Um, if you haven't done so, make sure you're subscribed to my channel with the notification bell engaged, so you know when I go live. Because I don't have a schedule for when I put these videos up, um, for various reasons. So um, next one should be a Pokemon Nuzlocke challenge. After that, I don't know what I'm gonna do, because I have so many options. I'd mentioned the possibility of doing like a Breath of Fire 2 run or Final Fantasy Legend 3, because there's a strong connection between Final Fantasy Mystic Quest and Final Fantasy Legend 3. Final Fantasy Legend 3, I've already beaten in 8 hours before. I'm not sure I can stick to that because I want to do a bit of a challenge with it when I do it. Before I was kind of doing the easiest route possible, and I was, following a guide pretty much to the T, um, and giving personal commentary as I went, about the game. But whenever I do Final Fantasy Legend 3, I want to put a spin on it. Um, just because there are a handful of people that I know in real life, um, that I should be able to symbolize with the four main characters in that game. But there's a different strategy for each type of character that you have. I want to make sure that's in order before I even set into it. I will say, like for instance, there's one person in my life I think would be well symbolized um, by someone who plays a monster or mutant type character, that whenever there's meat in front of him, whenever there's food in front of him, that he will eat it. The difficulty is going to be managing the different types of monsters that you can get and at what level and if it's appropriate, what changes when it's appropriate you have to change away before you change back. um, what is it that you do to make that character usable? Because in that game, if you didn't have anyone eat any robot parts or any meat monster parts, they would stay human and mutant throughout the rest of the game, and it would be just fine. It's easy to beat that way. Um, I made an exception for this. I made one of my main attackers and healers a um, it's technically an Iron Lady, but it was a he. It's an Iron Man, and that's only because it's like one of the only character types in the game that has an inherent, I think, it's either a wind attack or a defense against wind. I can't remember which. I think it's defense against wind. And it makes a couple of very critical boss fights a lot easier to manage. And that's it. That's the only reason I made the switch. And it's really not a bad switch, not a bad idea. Um, but to have a character where your typing is constantly changing and having to negotiate around that. There are some character types that can use magic and some that can't. And so if you have magic assigned to one and then that one, gets turned into something that can't use magic, that's kind of a waste. Not just because of the character, but because now you have to reevaluate your entire strategy. Um, so see, these are the things I think about. The game came out around the same time this did. Um, as a matter of fact, you would pretty easily notice if I did Final Fantasy Legend 3 right after I did Final Fantasy Mystic Quest, you would see that there were some of the same assets used. And the first composer, the one that was responsible for most of the dungeons and battle themes in Mystic Quest, is responsible for all of the music in Final Fantasy Legend 3. And I think he does a pretty good job of balancing it all out himself. Um, however, um, that's just the way that game is structured. It's simpler in some ways and more complicated in others. You have four main characters. You have a fifth character that comes in and out depending on where you're at in the storyline. Um, but the complexities of, all right, well, I have at least one character whose task is going to be to change as much as humanly possible. Um, it's gonna mess with general expectations and balancing. Um, but I guess the reason I mentioned when this game came out, when Final Fantasy Legend 3 came out, and when Final Fantasy Mystic Quest came out, I don't know which was the chicken and which was the egg. Um, but I can tell you they clearly shared a lot of the same assets and like their artwork, leadership, and content creation is very similar. So anyway, clearly I have a lot to say and a lot to think about as far as that game is concerned. But I don't want to. It's almost like the Nuzlocke challenge. I don't want to set myself up, say, all right, well with this character, I'm going to make this painful. Um, it would almost make me want to kill off that character so that I don't have to deal with them anymore. Um, and because it's an extension of some real life relationships that I have, I would rather not insert that kind of negativity, even if it's a joke. You know what I mean? I don't. But I can see into the game going, okay, I can't do this anymore. I can't run with this. Um, so on one hand, that would be a fun little experiment. On the other hand, it could be very frustrating. Um, not that I would expect any of them to actually watch the streams or to care one way or the other about the outcome of the game. Um, it's just an unnecessary amount of negativity, I think, that could be inserted into the whole mix, and I'd rather not. So I have to do some research on that, see if that's a good idea. I do think Breath of Fire 2 would be fun. Um, I don't know if I should play just go ahead and play the Game Boy Advance version. The music is not as good, but you get twice as much experience and gold from fighting, so you don't have to grind so much. Um, so the game won't seem as hard just because it won't be as long. Um, so there's that. And of course, I still have that really weird Final Fantasy 5 four job Fiesta. Let me see. I still have it up. Not that. Oh, I think I may have lost it. I took a screenshot of it. It was something ridiculous. Like, I'm trying to remember what the first one was. Oh, yeah. It's Blue Mage, Berserker, Thief, and Mystic Knight. Technically, these are all jobs you can get at the second crystal, but the way these runs are done, you're not supposed to change your job class until you actually get to that point. So, um, that could be interesting. Blue mages are definitely cool. Um, it also means a lot of my healing is going to be done in battle. So that's a thing. But at least I'll have characters that can equip some form of heavy armor, which I haven't had in a Final Fantasy V run in a while. So that'll be different. I think my money situation will be different because I won't be selling as much gear. Um, but berserkers, you can't control them. All they do is attack constantly, and there are some enemies that will retort back if you attack them. Um, there's some enemies that are basically invincible to physical attacks. Um, I don't know, just I can see that being a bit of a bear. But there are people that have actually beaten the entire game with four berserkers. It's very possible. I guess depending on what you equip them with. I don't know. I mean, that's a whole other world of challenge because again, you can't control them at all. You're basically just watching the game happen. As a matter of fact, if you just got through watching me play Final Fantasy V, you know that in the last dungeon there are some enemies, one in particular, that if you attack it, it will counterattack with very strong magic. So, if you do end up hitting it, it's hit to kill, or you're going to get seriously hurt, you know. Um, so things like that come to mind. But there's the thief, so you're not relying just on drops. You can actually um, steal good items. Um, and the Mystic Knights are interesting because they're like knights except for uh, they have a slightly I think it's probably like slightly lower attack, slightly higher magic attack, and they can associate different spells with their blades. I think it's called Spell Blade. So basically, you cast a spell on your sword, and then you can attack with the sword, and then your sword um, has that element to it. It's as if you're casting the spell plus attacking at the same time. It's a pretty overpowered um, in certain spots of the game if you know what you're doing. And theoretically, you should also be able to use it to heal your party. So if I put fire on the sword and everyone in my party has a flame ring, instead of relying on curing normally, because we won't have a white mage in the party, I would do that, and I would cast fire on the sword, and then use the sword to attack my own party, so that it would heal them instead. Yeah, think outside the box with these things. That run will be quirky and frustrating at times. Um, Instead of raising money based on, how many hours I spend playing the game, I might end up raising more money if I count the number of times I get a game over, or how many times I incidentally curse in the live stream just because I expect it to be that frustrating. Um, it should be fun. Doesn't mean that, it won't be fun, but I can see it being frustrating. So, all that being said, I have options. I have ideas. Um, I do want to try the Mount Moon challenge and the Gift Pokemon challenge with Fire Red, Leaf Green, but I just got through playing a couple of different Pokemon runs in the original Red and Blue, and I just wanted to give that I wanted to give that game a bit of a rest before I pick it back up. Um, More for y'all's sake than for mine. But anyway, that's a lot of talking about a lot of nothing. Um, as I said earlier, if you made it this far, I definitely appreciate you. Make sure you're subscribed with your notification bell engaged so you know what's going on when it's going on. Um, and I'll pick up on that Nuzlocke idea sometime very soon. Again, I appreciate you watching, and I look forward